All right, everybody. Mr. Patel is just restarting his computer, so I figured I would get us kicked off. It is July 25th, 2024. Let me know how this mic sounds. I adjusted it a little bit, so hopefully get a little bit more range to it. Apple pulling back to $218, down from 240. Amazon back $20 itself, 180. Dutch Bros pulling back to 37. Google back in the 160s, believe it or not. Palantir having a big pullback down to just under $2,700. S&P 500 about 5,400 at this point. The Q's also at 460. Bitcoin actually taking a little bit of a turn back to 66, even though it was pulling back into the $63,000 range a little bit yesterday. And I did see oil spiking up about 1%. I'm not sure if it's going to be on a consistent rally, but it is at about 78.47 as I'm looking at it for WTI. $82 for Brent. Natural gas just hanging about $2 at Henry Hub. Not exactly sure why. I don't know if it's because it's summer. Good question. Gets me concerned. Anyway, because I work in oil and gas. That's the only reason why I'm concerned. You should not be concerned. You should be excited with that. So I'm genuinely curious where we're going to take this episode. I think there's a lot of pivot points. There's a lot of things we could talk about. We can talk about macroeconomic, why when I was in the shower this morning thinking about why I think the market's going down. Obviously, Amit did a phenomenal job talking about Tesla and Google yesterday. So there's an opportunity to talk about that. Somebody in the chat already mentioned Verizon. There's an opportunity to talk about that. There's also cruise lines. There's a lot of things and a lot of places we could take this. And I'm just going to wait for Mr. Patel and ask him straight up. Like, one, why are you late, my guy? And then two, I'll ask him, there's a lot of ways we could take this Thursday evening, July 25th podcast on the Cashflow Chronicles. Mr. Patel, how you doing?
Good, man. Stupid Microsoft just decided to do an update.
Mine too, honestly. It did.
Yeah. It's weird. I logged onto the computer and then it said, do you want to restart your computer? And usually I just say no, but for some reason I accidentally pressed yes today. So it just did a quick update. I'm glad it wasn't like back in the day. Back in the day, they did
it'd be
if you did an update. Yeah. No, it's just quick. So
that's part of the reason why I got this new laptop, because it would still take like 5 minutes to get my old laptop booted up. Mm-hmm. And now this thing, within 30 seconds, it just reads your face and you're on. I love it.
Which one do you have?
I got a GeForce Stealth old gaming computer from like 2021, 2022. But it's got a 3070 in it. It's not bad. Okay. Yeah, it's not bad. It's a little bit bigger. So if you're like a worker, it's definitely not the best because you have to carry it and it's fucking heavy. But obviously the graphics on it are fucking phenomenal. So it just depends on what you're going for.
I like MacBooks. I'll be honest. I used to be a Microsoft only kind of guy forever until I got a MacBook with an M1 chip in it. And dude, I've never looked back. It is the best laptop hands down that I've ever had. Yeah. The only part that I'm not a big fan of, it's like a giant solid aluminum block, but it's super quiet. Like it's like you can't ever hear it, and it's really nice. Like I love that laptop. And I think from now on, like whenever I get a laptop, it's definitely going to be a MacBook. Like I've had multiple laptops before, always had heating issues, always had issues around freaking the sound and just being excessive. Mac, they just do a really good job of building a product. On the other hand, for a desktop, I'll probably stick to a PC only because there are a lot of games and a lot of different applications that I want to run that Mac doesn't support. So, it's kind of like a trade-off. So it's kind of like I have a dual system at home where my laptops are pretty much like my day-to-day laptops are Apple products. My phone is an Apple product, but then my desktop PC is still a PC. Now, if Apple came up with something that was a little bit more, friendly towards all this other stuff, then maybe I'd switch that out too. But for now, I think I'm fine.
Yeah. There you go. Did I say 2,700 for Palantir? If I said 2,700, I wouldn't be here. No, I'm just kidding. I might have accidentally said 2,700, but let's just be honest. I'd be on a vacation for a couple weeks if it was at 2,700. I don't even know how much that would be. Let me check real quick.
A couple of things. One, I want to apologize for Monday. Like I was driving. Well, not Monday. Was it Tuesday? When I was driving home from Savannah, I did not take into account that I was going to be driving through the boonies of Georgia. Like I didn't realize, like, wait a second, maybe the signal is not going to be good. I thought we could at least have like a decent stream. But so yeah, I'll make sure I try not to like set up a scheduled drive during the same time. But I mean, dude, life is very fluid, right? Like
That
there's
is,
always going to be things that are going to be coming up here and there. It's hard to be consistent, you know.
yeah.
So
One thing I should have tried before I gave up on you, Chris, was, and somebody mentioned in the comments section on the video, they said, why don't you just call them and just put them on speaker like Amit does? I was like, that's a good point. Instead of having you stream in, you know?
I'll tell you right now, if the problem is any overheads, like overhead passes, anytime you
Ah,
drive under an overhead pass, it cuts out, and then there's a delay in the thing. I don't know. I just don't think it was a good idea to be in a moving thing. But I will say this: I think Wong is absolutely correct in saying that if I had a Starlink, it might not have impacted me that much. And I think that is what we might be moving into in the eventual future, where we're going to have a lot more satellite based communications with low, I mean, latency is still going to always be an issue, but it's not going to be that bad of an issue. Like
right.
I see all these people with Starlinks and it's nuts, man. One of my biggest bull cases for the cruise lines is actually Starlink. I know a lot of
Yeah.
people are going to say, what does Starlink have to do with the cruise lines? And I'm like, okay, well, if you're on a cruise ship, you have a captive audience. All these people are addicted to the internet. I don't know anyone in their right brains that could spend, like, let's say 7 days on a cruise ship and not be connected to the internet. So all of them are going to be getting the cruise, on the cruise ship internet, especially now that Starlink is giving you a much higher bandwidth. So
Mm-hmm.
that's about $20 to $30 per day. Most cruise fares, like even the cheapest ones, are like $120, $130 per day. If you take that, multiply it by two people, multiply that out by 20, 30, you're getting a 20% additional revenue source from a captive audience. So even if not everyone subscribes to it, it's still a huge value add for these cruise lines that wasn't there prior to COVID, right? So if you look at the revenues for a lot of these cruise ships, dude, their margins are going to actually expand a little bit thanks to Starlink,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, our attention spans have gotten a little bit out of whack, John. I agree with you, but at the same time, I think it was so typical not to hear from people for a week or two,
Hmm.
because you just didn't have that access to them. But now you do. If you're not on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, uh, you know, I feel like, yeah, it's just interesting. Like, I feel like you're always connected to somebody in some way at some point, and I think we've just gotten used to being able to, talk to our kids every night or our nieces and nephews every night through FaceTime, and I think
Mm-hmm.
it's just the way that unfortunately the world is these days, and I think it's a positive thing. It's allowed a lot of efficiencies, and it's allowed a lot of things get done a lot faster. But I agree with you, Chris. Not only just for Starlink specifically for cruise lines, but just for like RV travel and people going across the
Mm-hmm.
country, because it's very difficult to work off of a hotspot for more than however many hours. And you're trying to charge three different devices at once so you can maintain
Yeah.
it, and it's like it just makes it a little bit more difficult to be able to get work done um, and like have presentations and stuff like that while you're trying to hotspot from a phone. And then generally speaking, Verizon doesn't really like you to hotspot for longer than
Mm-hmm.
a couple dozen minutes at a time. And if you do, they start charging you out the butt. So I think you're right. I'm curious to see what happens and who gets very competitive in the space going forward. Because right now, really the leader is Starlink, and I'm curious to see who else comes to.
That's why we're seeing AST Mobile has been picking up um, a lot of momentum. I don't know if you've been
Yeah,
checking them by any chance, but look at this.
yeah,
They're literally
ASTS.
on they're on like a one-way upward trajectory right now. It's crazy. They're up 24% today. Look at this. In the last month, they went from $2 to right now $16. Okay. $4 billion market cap. And then all of this is just based on, let's say, AST Mobile achieves space-based 5G cellular broadband. Let me just share this screen with you guys. So I wonder if it might not be a bad idea to add this to the portfolio and just see where things go. You know, Right here,
Possibly.
ASC building first and only space-based cellular broadband network accessible directly by a standard mobile phone. Today announced another unprecedented leap in telecommunications by successfully making first ever 5G connection for voice and data over that company engineers. That's let's see. In historic accomplishment, first ever space-based video voice calls using everyday and modified smartphones. In June, announced the satellite reached initial download speeds of 10 megabits per second. The company's comprehensive. I mean, dude, this is something definitely worth checking out. We definitely have to do more research on it. Even like I looked at it, I was like, oh, well, let me do some more research, blah blah blah. But I forgot to keep up with it. Otherwise, I would have definitely added it to the position. My wife got me ramen from like our yes. All right.
Oh, Jinya, dude, Jinya's the shit. Yeah,
dude, I love Jinya. Like I get
tell me your order because the last few times I've been like experimenting, and the first time I went, my one friend, she was Vietnamese. She was like, "We gotta go. You've never been. Like, welcome to Texas."
Yeah,
and she was like, "Try this one," and it was phenomenal. And every time I've been back, I've been trying to figure out which one it was because I don't remember. But anyway,
who here in the chat has been to Jinya? If you've been to Jinya, just let us know, man. Dude, maybe that's one company. That's one company I hope eventually IPOs. I would definitely buy it. I love that place, dude.
There's only 34.
Yeah, it's really small, but I'm telling you, they have great food. So
good quality control too. I've been to like 3 or so in Houston, and all of them have been pretty good. I'm just trying to find that creme de la creme one. Maybe she just put a bunch of sriracha in it. I don't know. Anyway,
yeah.
I mean, she's a cool chick. She's married now, has a kid. I think she might have 2 kids, but yeah. She's a cool chick. Smart
guys. Got to try my ramen shop. Damn, yeah, definitely, Adam. Next time I'm in Chicago, man, definitely come down. Yeah,
I forgot about you, man. Yeah,
apparently they're moving downtown near my shop. Oh, dude, that's bad. Okay,
not good.
So the best thing about their there's only one thing that I get from there. I get the spicy, creamy, vegan ramen with thin noodles, and it's good. It's like I tell my wife vegan? At least
because
I don't know. It just tastes better. It's just
nope. No hate.
I used to think vegan food would be absolutely terrible, but if they prepare it right, everything tastes good. You know.
Yeah.
So I just like their spicy, creamy, vegan ramen. That's it. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, I'll have to give that a go at one point. Maybe this weekend because I still have a little bit of a cold. So maybe tomorrow for lunch or something. Maybe I'll go pick some up. But yes, ASTS, that's one that's been on my radar because I like the space race. And my thought was always, would Rocket Lab try to compete in that space? And I think ASTS has done a phenomenal job because they've already started partnering with the major cell phone providers, right? So I think that's why they're getting a lot of backing. But
how did we miss this, Matt? How did we miss it?
The thing is, I guess you get blinded, right? You think you find the company, right? And but I still think that there's, I don't know. I still think that there's several other companies out there in the space race that will do really well. So yeah, I have a few on my sleeve that I'm like wondering if I'm gonna pull the trigger on personally.
I think we should add it to our speculator portfolio, like part of our portfolio. Maybe add like 10 shares. I mean, but then again, like we'd have to sell some stuff. So let's pull up the portfolio. Let's see what we've got going on.
Right. Good. Yeah. Good segue.
Someone says Black Sky. Black Sky is okay. It's a good company, but they do mostly imaging. A buddy of mine mentioned AS to me a while ago. I'm sick as well about it. Yeah. Sorry, Adam. We're all there, man.
No, Black Sky is actually one of the ones that I've been thinking about actually because they do a lot more. They do imaging, but they do imaging like 15 to 20 times per day in one single location.
All right, listen. I may need to just send you some cash because all of our positions are good positions that I just want to hold. You know, and we need to put some fresh capital in there, and we don't have monetization on, and this not having new capital go in, especially into some good names.
Dude, we were doing pretty good. We were getting like 150, $200 a month. So hopefully, the 31st, whenever that is, that's when we can reapply.
Yeah. Well, until
for
then,
next week.
I may send you some money and we just put that into the account, man.
I'd hate to have you.
Because
I'd
we
hate
need.
to have you do that.
Nah,
But
well, you put in an equal amount. There you go. That'll be our, because I
okay,
mean, this is a
that's
joint
fine.
portfolio.
I'll
So,
put in a couple
I
$100. Whatever you send.
yeah,
Whatever you send, I'll match it.
exactly. We'll put in
That'll
it
be fun.
equally. Because I really do want to take a look at possibly adding some more to the cruise lines. They took a little bit of a dip today, but they're still good. They're still outperforming from when we bought them. Today, we'll go over that. We'll go over that.
So this is
There aren't,
current
yeah.
value up top to lowest value on bottom. So just so you're aware, walking through it.
Yeah. One of the things that we've been getting hit a little bit on is the TQQQ position, but because that's such a small position, it's not a big deal to us in terms of total performance. BPYPM has been doing well. BPYPN has been doing okay. So like you can see that it's been one of our stalwarts in terms of like total return, because we've been getting crazy, like really high dividends. That's been good. But if you look at BPYPM, they have been appreciating pretty good. Like, so that's always nice to see. And I have a pretty substantial position in that. Like Next Decade was down today about 4%. So maybe that's where we need to also dollar cost average in a little bit, increase some of our positions. Oh, there you go. You have BPYPN. It's all the way at the top. I was wondering where I thought we had a position in
Yeah,
there.
sorry.
It's one of our largest positions right now. Okay, good.
Yeah, about a
good. I
quarter of the
like
portfolio.
that. Good. I like that. Okay. So CCL, NCLH. Yeah, I really do want to add a little bit more to them. TMF.
Dude, I can't wait till this TMF position just pops off. I can't wait.
Dude, it's coming because
it's on the precipice. They like I don't want to. I'm not going to lead the horse. I'm not going to lead the horse. Go.
No, you lead it. Go ahead. It's your podcast.
So I mean, like I was in the shower this morning and I'm like, why are things selling off? And I was like, why is everybody freaking out? And so honestly, I think the real reason is because data in what we've seen, like earnings are actually coming in. If you think about it, everybody was overblowing. The analysts were like over forecasting the shit out of everybody. And now that everybody's coming in and they're meeting or slightly coming under, except for like Ford and a few other outliers, everyone's doing rather well. And I think up until the last couple days, everyone was kind of starting to think, and even one of the previous Fed presidents was like, I don't know, maybe the end of July should be the first cut. Things aren't looking so hot out there. And to be honest, I'm like kind of between a rock and a hard place because things are looking okay, but then you have GDP numbers coming out of like 2.8% growth when everyone was expecting 2%. And you're just sitting there like, is the economy really needing this rate cut? And I don't know if the answer is yes. So I'm thinking that the reason why we're seeing this such a large pull down over the last few days is because maybe people are realizing we're not actually going to get that cut. Or the opposite is because things haven't performed as well. And actually the data is showing that it's getting worse, which I don't necessarily agree with, that people are realizing, man, this economy actually isn't so hot. We do need a rate cut. But I think it's more of the former than the latter. But I think a lot of people are starting to recognize that, July could have been an opportunity, but it's starting to slip away and it's really going back to September. And so I think that's really hurting people because people are still really want, multiple rate cuts this year, but I think they're only still going to get 2 or 3. So that's just my sort of thought around why. And with that, I mean, I'm sure once we finally do get a rate cut, man, this TMF is gonna start screaming. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah. For me, I'm looking at this from so number one, the US government is got to stop with the craziness around uncertainty around spending. So what a lot of people, in my opinion, are probably worried about, especially for the long bond, is what is the viability of the US dollar 20, 30 years into the future, right? So right now, the national debt is a concern and it's a problem. And the thing is, like, a lot of the stuff that the former president has been saying is kind of like a little bit kind of cuckoo kazoo when it comes to long-term stability. So it may end up working out, but it still doesn't provide a lot of like great things. So the whole idea is they want to lower taxes. Like Trump wants to lower taxes, which, by the way, I'm actually a, fairly okay doing person, so I'm fine. I could actually use the taxes, but I know that would be really stupid because long term that would destabilize the viability of the dollar. So do I want to cut taxes on the back of losing the value of the dollars that I have? Like, do I just want to be paper rich? Like, no, like, don't want to be paper rich. So I think the idea of cutting like income taxes and just raising tariffs, it's probably not a good idea. That's probably not what investors and long-term treasuries want to hear. They want to hear that, hey, we're going to control our spending. We're going to keep taxes at a rate that's, beneficial to the overall population, and pay off our debts. So these are the kinds of things that like the U.S. really needs to get its handle on, which is just controlling its deficit. And I think some of that is going to come just purely from Fed cutting interest rates. That should help materially, and we need to keep going with our economic expansion, and that'll help lower down our debt to GDP. Because at the end of the day, that's what really matters: debt to GDP. As long as your GDP is growing and your debt is kind of stable, that means that you can kind of like slowly wean yourself off of the cliff. Right now, we're talking about just it's the dumbest thing to try to lower taxes right now. It doesn't make any sense. Everything is working well. Usually you want to do cuts. You want to increase spending and cut taxes when the economy is in the toilet, not the other way around. And so I don't know. The market's not exactly enjoying that thing. So
I'm not trying to bring this into politics because I this is a genuine I don't know, right?
Yeah.
What is Kamala's stance on the debt? Like, has she ever talked about it publicly?
I don't know.
Is it?
Yeah. I don't know.
Because I know Biden's talked about it, right? And when we've seen, how he talks about inflation, but I have never seen Kamala really honestly talk about much, because she's always kind of in the second person, right? So it's, I'm kind of interesting because I was listening to Patrick Bet-David, and he was just like, well, he's like, if I forget exactly what he said, but he's like, if national debt is your number one concern, he was like, then he's like, you're either going to vote for Trump or Harris, depending on that. If you're more so concerned about, he said it really eloquently, and I'm going to not do it justice, but he's like, eventually, he's like, if DEI is a very big concern for you, then you're going to vote for Harris. And if I forget what the second, it was like abortion control or whatever, is a really big thing for you, then you're going to vote for Harris. He's like, so it kind of makes it a little simpler. Like Trump is more so about getting America in terms of business back and growing, tax cuts, potentially world debt, and potentially trying to get that closer to break even. He kind of talked a little bit about that during his first presidency, but at the same time, we didn't really see a lot of that. It was more spending. So I'm kind of curious how we can kind of turn that back around. But obviously, Harris is running on like, abortion should be allowed no matter what. It's your body, your choice, and obviously DEI is a big piece of her campaign. So I'm kind of curious to see, where things lie. Have they announced a debate yet? I'm very curious.
I don't think so. I think this is all happening in the background. No one knows what's actually going on. So it's not good for the stability of I don't know. We'll see what happens. This is one of those times where you kind of have to show confidence. Like this is why we need a president who's going to come in and really just put things into perspective. I mean, I hate to say this, but President Obama did a really good job of giving the economy some confidence when things were in the toilet in 2008. Like that really helped out. Yeah, he basically like screwed himself over a little bit. He lost a lot of political capital with some of the moves that he had to make to save the economy. And essentially, so if you look at 2008, the banks were collapsing. And so a lot of people were like, it's okay, let the banks collapse. Who gives a shit about these Wall Street bankers? And the thing is, if the banks hadn't been saved, we really would have got a depression. But because we saved the Wall Street banks, and by the way, all the banks paid us back and paid back the U.S. Treasury, we survived it. But then you still had this giant population of people like kind of arguing and mad. They're like, oh, like your guys are always bailing out the big guys and blah blah. And we created a situation of moral hazard, and it's such a weird dynamic that politicians sometimes have to put party aside and put the national interests of the country first. And I think we've gone so far away from that. It fucking hurts, man. Both of these people, I don't trust. I love President Trump in some of the ways that he's done things, especially with regards to foreign policy. But from economic standpoint, right now I'm a little bit worried because the things that he's saying, I wonder if they're only for the election or if he actually genuinely means them is gonna be trying to put them into policy. Because that's the thing about Trump. What he says is never usually the case. He's a very pragmatic business person. If you look at any pragmatic business person, they'll do what they need to do to get in the door and then be, a lot more forthcoming with what the real agenda and the real policies are going to be like. And then after that, I think the one good thing about Trump is that he literally does a good job of putting the right people in the right places. I can't say I disagreed with many of the cabinet choices that he had. Like, he had a really strong cabinet, especially with Steve Mnuchin as Treasury Secretary. I think he was great, so.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting one. I'm sure many people have seen this at some place or another, but the thing that drags my attention, hopefully you can see my cursor maybe over here in the mid left. It talks about the US federal debt to GDP, like you were talking about, in 1960, 1980, 2000, and where we are today. And it's just gotten out of control, right? I mean, of course, if you're making a crap ton more money, you're allowed to go into the coffers a little bit more to continue to build. But our GDP or debt to GDP has doubled, if not gone 2.5x, really, over the past 20, 25 years. And that's just pretty insane, It's an interesting place. Like, I don't know where I've never done enough studying to understand really where things have gone from a spending perspective to really get you to the place where you are today. Like, what has it have on a percentage basis, has our actual tax draw percentage per citizen actually gone down, or have we just been spending more as a government per GDP? And I think it's more of the latter. And if that's the case, what segment is that? Is it education? Is it military? Is it infrastructure? Probably not, because infrastructure is garbage. But I don't know what the answer is. But
I mean, it's been a combination of things. Military is definitely one of them. Military, like, we subsidize the crap out of our military. I mean, we subsidize the military spending for a lot of our allies, right? And I think that's the one thing I did like about President Trump when he came in. He told the Europeans, like, y'all got to start paying up your dues too. Like, we can't be the only ones spending our money. You guys enjoying all the social welfare programs. Well, our citizens are constantly having to, fight the wars and fight the battles. But then again, the U.S. is the one that goes into so many wars and battles. So it's kind of a weird situation. Someone said national debt increased 7.8 trillion during the Trump presidency. Yes, that is very true, but majority of that was because of COVID spending. And I believe that we really did need the COVID spending to keep everything going at that time. So I don't think we had a choice on spending that.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is the infrastructure spending that got layered on top under the Biden administration that I think made things a little bit more difficult. I'm not saying it made things like super bad. It just made things more difficult. And then you layer on top the invasion of Russia and Ukraine. That ended up causing energy prices to spike. And then you had all these like tailwind effects that started to kind of come around with them. But we're getting to a place right now where the next 4 years, I think, are going to be good, but there's definitely going to be a bad year in between there. And my guess, and this is my estimation, is 2025 is going to suck. Like, it's going to suck. And I have a few reasons why I think it's going to suck. Number one, I think the AI bubble is likely to pop in 25. Okay, I think to me it's become clearer every day. I think the hype around AI is starting to kind of wane a little bit, and the expectations for AI growth, especially in the semiconductor space, it's it's just too much. I think the mega caps are going to start cutting back because what's going to happen is it's going to start at the bottom and then make its way to the top. So you're going to see companies asking themselves, we're spending all this additional money on AI software and everything. Like, is it really providing value to our customers? And if it's not, that they're going to say, okay, cancel the contract going forward. Then the software companies who are buying all this compute and layering on top their AI products, they're going to say, hey, we don't need as much compute. And then it's going to go up to hyperscalers saying, oh, we don't need as much compute, means we don't need as many GPUs. And then you have the semiconductors, they all start to kind of like congregate around that and say, you know what, maybe we don't have 100% year over year growth in GPUs, you know? And that's where I think the market is eventually going to make its way. And I think that will be a trigger point. The other trigger that I'm seeing is let's just say a very moderate decline in housing. I think the decline in housing is starting to happen, especially with us in the South, like in Georgia, in Florida, in Texas. Like the amount of inventory that's coming on the market is absolutely nuts. So I think a lot with all that additional inventory coming to market, you're going to see prices kind of depress a little bit. And what you're going to see is the cost of shelter is going to moderate significantly. And that should help bring down inflation. But we might also see a deflationary cycle happening, you know. So look at that. That's crazy to see. The inventory has gone up that much. And
this is Texas.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about that is though, Matt, look at it like go towards all the way to the end. That is what it's like during June. No, go all the way up there. No, keep going up. There you go. So right now there's 108,000 homes available in Texas. Okay. And this is in June. If you look at the past, usually this inventory spike is usually towards more of like the latter half of the year, not really in the summertime. Summertime, usually things are there. So the question is, will that line keep going up throughout the rest of the year? And I think it will. I really think it will.
I am curious because I'm curious because at least in Texas, you know, these were great home buying years. You know, and if it stays in this, you know, kind of channel, I think it'll be okay. But I hear what you're saying. If it really does inflate beyond that by a couple dozen of tens of thousands of houses, I mean, then yeah, I can see what you're saying. So I guess we'll find out when July data gets kind of pulled in here.
The biggest problem is actually rate cuts. Okay, right now you're a decent investor, so you know, like, hey, if I'm going to buy a house, I'm going to be buying at this specific interest rate. If you know that the Fed is going to be cutting interest rates for the next 6 to 12 months consecutively, you are not going to buy a house. You're going to say, I'm going to wait until the interest rates are lower, which is exactly what's going to happen with a lot of buyers. A lot of buyers are going to come into this market saying, you know what? I'm going to wait until the next rate cut. And then when the next rate comes, they're going to say, I'm going to wait for another rate cut. And then when that comes, they're going to say, I'm going to wait for another one. So once you get on the path of cutting interest rates, you are going to start to see all this inventory kind of come on the market. But then you're also going to see a lot of buyers waiting on the sidelines for the interest rates to come down. Because the last thing you want to do is buy a home and then, like, you know, a year later have to refinance and then pay all this additional money just to refinance the mortgage again.
Right.
You know, so this is where
you still have to pay closing costs, right? You're still gonna have to end up coming out of pocket, you know, $4,000 or $5,000 just to be able to redo the mortgage. Yeah.
So I think right now we need to keep our head on a swivel. And this is crazy, man. But it is what it is. This is not, by the way, a general market thing, because there are certain parts of the country where there aren't as many homes on the market, like that are, you know, like I think the Northeast and I think the West, in terms of like total housing, they don't have as big of a problem. But a lot of these southern states that were like really big during
here's Austin.
during COVID.
Here's an example.
Yeah.
So this is one that you're kind of talking about.
We spoke
Right.
about this about a few months ago. Remember? Look at that.
Mhm.
There's more homes available in Austin now than there were before COVID.
Yeah.
And what's funny is a lot of these homes are these California transplants that
Yeah.
moved to Austin, and now they're all like, well, we don't like Austin anymore. They're moving their asses
I'm
back to
curious,
California.
what other areas were like big? I know Montana was
Florida,
pretty big.
dude, look at Florida. Florida is absolutely crazy right now,
Yeah,
like the amount
Montana's
of
not that bad.
inventory.
Let me see Florida.
And none of these
Montana.
houses are catching bids, dude. None of them. Even like I'm looking in Georgia, right? Most of the houses that are coming on are these just not good houses. Like they're just not what a normal person would buy. But it's crazy because there's so many new homes that are coming on. So it's a question of, do I want to buy an overpriced old ass house that's been around for 60 years, has maybe like a little bit of paint thrown on it by an investor, versus a brand new house where the builder is giving me like a 100 basis point deduction and they're buying down my rate, you know?
Hmm. I'm
Look at
surprised
that.
that this one's not as cyclical. This is Florida. That's why I like kind of went like, eh. I was surprised because it's not really like cyclical like you would see in like Texas. But yeah, I mean
Yeah.
it's almost back up to
That's because Florida's
pre-pandemic
weather
levels.
is always nice, man. It's always
Yeah.
like, and a lot of retirement people are going to be moving to Florida. That's usually the case, right? You get old enough. With the other markets, you see a lot more seasonality because it's usually young families, right? So usually they move around during the school year. So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, let's move in the summer. Let's go that
That's a
route.
big thing in Houston. People always wait to the end of the year.
Yeah,
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 I'm curious, Pennsylvania. That's
yeah.
where I'm originally from, what that looks like.
Pennsylvania, I think, is fine. Like the Northeast didn't see nearly the amount of new builds and new construction that like the South did. So I don't think that. Yeah,
Look
see,
at
look at
that.
that. The inventory is still low. So
Well,
Pennsylvania is
from
probably going
talking
to
to my
hold up.
sister though, things are super competitive. I mean, you only have
Yeah,
20,000 houses. It's a state with 20 million people. Like,
yeah,
so if you think about it, like you're fighting against potentially 20 million people, and that's just in state. To potentially buy 20,000 houses. That's absolutely insane.
yeah, yeah. So so a lot of people,
Wow.
if you look at someone said New Jersey's expensive. So the areas where there wasn't a lot of home building, I think they're gonna be okay. Where there's just a lot of home building, those are the ones that are probably gonna take the biggest hits. You know,
That's
look at that.
that's
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 Jersey.
new listing. What about active listing? Here you
There you go. See?
go. Yeah. So what you're
So
saying is I didn't mess up by buying two houses in Jersey.
probably not. I think you did
Not yet.
okay.
Yeah.
Not yet anyway. The
Not
question
yet. Yeah.
is the question is
Does
why
it turn?
why are the markets in those areas holding up while the others aren't? And I think it's a couple of reasons why I think that's the case. It's probably because of just how like the economics are developed around certain parts of the country, where you have like in the South you have a lot more boom and bust cycles that happen, whereas in the Northeast they're kind of like old time homes that are just like old industries. So you have to look at it from an industry perspective also. Yeah,
Hmm.
I think it's a very weird situation also because a lot of what you see in the Northeast is that there's so much overhang in terms of regulation that building a new home is really difficult, right? Like building a new, like I can't think of any new subcommittee like housing projects that are really built in the Northeast because there's just so much regulatory red tape. And there's the same thing in California, right? California's housing crisis is pretty artificial in my opinion, where a lot of the regulations over in California prevent new houses being built. So it's one of those things that in the South it's been a lot easier, like permitting is easier, and so right now the number of homes that are coming on are there's a lot more. But then remember, Matt, this is one of those things that if you look like generational wise, that's why you're also seeing a lot of outbound migration probably from the Northeast into the South over the coming years because it's just affordability is better. Like if you
Hmm.
can afford a home in the South, then why wouldn't you move there?
Yeah.
Why would you want to stay in New Jersey Like if you look at the unit economics in New Jersey, you have to make like 150,000 just to like live like a peasant in the Northeast,
Mhm.
right? Whereas if you lived in Texas and you lived in Georgia or Florida, you live pretty comfortably with the amount that you're paying. I mean, not recently because of the house prices went up so much,
Yeah, if I
but I
get a
think
little
most
out
of
of the
it.
city though, ooh
Yeah,
man. And like
yeah,
and that used to be 10 years ago when I first moved here, it used to be like that where it was like 350, 400 grand and you're living like a king. Now you kind of have to go outside of the city a little bit, but I mean, still like if you go to the burbs here in Houston, man, the
yeah.
houses that you can get for 400, $500,000, you're like sitting on a couple acres, you got a pool, you got decent schools. It's like, why would you leave? Versus in the US, that's or sorry, not US, Northeast, it's gonna cost you, depending on where you're at, easily 1 million or up to probably 2.5 million if you're in like Connecticut or somewhere that's extremely, extremely expensive.
Long Island is probably what's kind of crazy is if you look at the property taxes in Long Island, dude, it's hard to see. Even for like a moderately priced home, it's like $20,000 a year in property taxes. Like that's a fucking mortgage. For $20,000 you could buy a home in one of these other states. But it sucks, man. It really does. So
Somebody's
someone's
asking
like,
when's the best time to buy. Yeah, I don't know. It really depends, man. I honestly, I was hesitant. I was one of those folks that said, I'm going to be traveling internationally. I did travel a little bit internationally, and I still may in my career. Um, my family was very much growing up a real estate family.
Mhm.
So any excess money, my family either always put into real estate. I did the opposite. I did stocks. And I would say it really depends on what you're into, right? Like my family grew up very much being like, okay, you got to paint the apartments when somebody moves out. You got to, and so I learned a lot of that, right? Housekeeping and just tenant turnover. So that all is kind of, in my, I don't want to say in my blood, but I knew what it's all about, always taking care of apartment complexes, stuff like that, shoveling snow, whatever it snowed, stuff like that, where, you just have to maintain the property. So I get that. And so I was always like, well, I'd rather do something a little bit more passive, right? I didn't want to, but at the same time, you don't get the leverage effects of, say, investing in stocks as you do for real estate. So there's pluses and minuses of both. And honestly, it really just depends on what you want to do. But if you can buy things at the right price for real estate, I honestly think it's a decent opportunity, especially if you're going to use it as and you do it well enough as a rental, and you don't overpay for it. And the problem, and that's a key point, because the problem is with small residential real estate is you're always going to be competing against somebody that loves the home. They need, like, honey, can we please? But money doesn't give a shit what your heart wants, right? Like money
Mhm.
is money. And so when you're thinking about it, you're unfortunately competing against those kind of folks that want to buy the home because it's cute and they can make it their first starter home. And so they'll outbid the fuck out of you for 50 grand for no reason
Yeah.
because they want that house. And that 50 grand is going to cause you an extra 200, $300 a month, maybe more in mortgage payments. And now you just went from being able to cash flow 300 bucks a month to having to come out of pocket. And that might be okay as well, right? Like there's areas where some people actually don't mind because of the appreciation, but it really just depends. Like, but I've recognized for me now that I'll just be blunt. I mean, you guys know, I'm at a place now where I'm trying to lever and like really like grow something pretty big. And before I was very much like debt is bad, right?
Mhm.
Debt can be very bad if you don't manage it appropriately. And so I get where some people are, and I recognize as well now having 3 houses underneath my belt that I don't want to. I always joke about oh, when's the next house, but to be honest, like I very much with these rate cuts want to get things a little bit under control. I'm actually probably going to sell a little bit of some of my excess positions and potentially get some of my leverage down in some of these properties, because the hope is now as we go into the next 5 to 10 years and the equity builds, like the one house that we bought in Jersey is already up 150 grand in terms of valuation. When we refinance that, I'll probably keep that equity in there, but it allows me in the future to either fund future franchises or buy another house if there's a decent house that's down the street that I want to put money into. And then I also don't have to worry as much, right? Because a lot of the money that I've been using over the past 10 years has been coming out of my own pocket every month. And because it's my hobby, right? I love my hobby and this is my hobby. So fortunately it's this rather than cocaine and hookers. But that have a place, that has a place too, you know? So I had to throw that in there. But anyway, but the thing is like, now that I have this ability to take from another house that has built its own equity, I don't have to rush to be like, oh, I need to get this done in a weekend. It's like I could take a little bit more time, hire somebody to do some of the turnover work, and lever a little bit and use that as kind of my cushion. Versus right now with stocks, you don't really get that opportunity, and you can do like lines of credit against stock position portfolios, but it's I think a little bit more iffy. Anyway.
Well, someone was asking what a good time. Take a look at this thing. If you ever get a chance, can you just share the screen that I have? There you go. So this is the Atlanta Fed. What it does is a home ownership affordability monitor. Basically, it tracks a lot of great information on what people can afford based on the median incomes in certain areas. And then they kind of aggregate that data and they publish it pretty regularly. And you can see what the best times to buy homes are typically. So usually the best times were around here when interest rates were low. So you can see around 3.5 on average. The median home price was 265. Median income was 65,000, which meant that, they were paying about 28% of the median income. Right now, you're looking at about 43% of the total share in median income. So right now, median incomes have gone up pretty significantly over the last few years, but the price of homes, when you layer on top the interest rate, have actually been pretty bad. So where in 2020, you're looking at about $1,000 in monthly payment, which ended up translate to about 28% of your income, which is below the affordable, the 30% tech quote unquote rule that they typically apply, especially at a 3.2% rate, to now home prices being around $100,000 more at a 7% interest rate, meaning that the median monthly went to almost $2,200. So this is why people are struggling, because the price of homes and the interest rates are up at the same time. I think eventually we will get the correction and we do head back to something a little bit more affordable. It's just mean reversion, right? That's just how things are. So it's going to be a combination. And so some people are thinking, well, if interest rates get cut, then the affordability will rise again. But I think inventory will also climb, in which case now affordability should help too. So you can see that on the chart here, and you can see what's actually affecting, what's actually driving the inflation. The affordability. So if we look here, the interest rate change negatively affected affordability once the Fed started to raise interest rates. So right here, October 21, all the way through here. So now one of the biggest challenges is this right here, which is the price change. The price change is still relatively high. What we technically need is something like this. But remember, this was all a correction and a recession. So this is not how you want to necessarily achieve affordability. Typically, you want to have incomes, keep growing, and at the same time, interest rates kind of moderate. So that kind of helps a little bit, and then also the prices being there as well. So you kind of want to have something like 2011, right? So you can see here in 2011, affordability spiked, but it wasn't because the price of homes went down. Prices of homes actually went up a little bit. Interest rates, they impacted a little bit here and there. But more importantly, it was a lot of income stuff related to it also. So I would say, looking at this chart, we're probably going to have a spike like this, in which case, once we're at a higher affordability level, that's typically at a good time to buy. But, hopefully by then people can, get into some better interest rates and better prices at the same time, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I think it all just depends on what kind of house, right? I think where you're going to see a lot of trouble is I think the starter and medium-sized homes are really going to struggle because those are going to be the majority of homes, right? People are always going to be fighting for that. So while interest rates are cheap, but I still think that the larger priced homes, the things that have gone up in price by, let's say, and we've already started to see this a lot, the super luxury homes that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars are really starting to lose their luster. One, because they're starting to put a lot of crackdown on like mansion taxes and things like that in California and other places. But I think people are more so about, not buying these massive luxury homes. Not to say that people won't buy them, but I think people are more about experiences and traveling than they are about, being in these massive homes. So they're still going to need a home base, but that might be a 3,000 square foot house instead of these 8,000 square foot houses that they used to want to potentially buy. Anyway.
Matt, so let's look at some metro areas. If people want to put in the chat which metro area that they want us to check out, but this is like a market that's waiting to correct. Like my area in Atlanta, Sandy Springs, Roswell. This is an area that's likely to correct. You're in Houston, right? So let's what would be your county?
Harris County.
Harris County. Where is it? No, I think they do it a little bit separately. You see Texas anywhere? Let me see. What would this area be called? Fort McAllen, Texas.
No.
Midland. I think it's just Houston, maybe. Let's see.
Yeah, it is. It was right at the bottom. Up now, it's right in the middle. You're just right below.
Right.
Up.
Oh, Houston, Woodlands, Texas. Yeah. See, this looks like an area that's probably gonna end up correcting. Let's look at something that's probably in like the Northeast, like Pennsylvania, what you just mentioned, right? Yeah. So, like, what part of Pennsylvania should I look at?
Philadelphia.
Let's look at Philly. Philadelphia. Actually, what is it? LMNOP. Philadelphia, Camden, Jersey. So this looks like affordability it's up there. Yeah, 52%, man. That's crazy. 52% of your annual income going towards, Philly is not good. Yeah.
A lot of people, when I was up there last, a lot of houses up for sale, believe it or not.
Let's see, New York City. Let's see. Actually, California would be a good place to look also. But California is artificial. I don't like looking at these artificial markets. Let's see if anyone else posted anything.
Phoenix, Long Island.
Okay, give me Nassau County, New York. Nassau, New York. It's Nassau County is probably going to be here. This is New York. It's not based on Nassau. It'd probably be like the New York, New Jersey area, maybe. I think that includes this. So even that, look at this. Median income, 62% of median income. Unless it's Long Island. Let me see if they put it on Long Island. No, they didn't list it like that.
What about Phoenix?
Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix. There it is. Mesa, Scottsdale. There you go. Look at that. I mean, geez, where is it affordable? Let's see. Well, they usually have a map here.
Not there.
Oh, there we go. This is what we actually need. So let's look at New York. God damn it. Where did it go? New York, or Philadelphia, right?
Well.
Okay. So these are the counties that it's unaffordable. So the threshold is 82%. So it was more affordable in 2020. Now it's not that much because the income is higher in the area. So you can actually look at it on a county by county level too. I think there's actually a giant map that shows you like metro affordability. Oh, there you go. This is the one I was looking at. So most of the country at this point is unaffordable. The only places are Pittsburgh, right? Chicago. Is it Michigan City? LaFonte, Indiana. Indiana is a place you want to move to, maybe. St. Louis. St. Louis is affordable. I'm not sure if you want to live there, but St. Louis is
It's
affordable.
cheap.
California is up there. It's definitely not affordable. New York
What about,
City,
what about San Antonio? Is that on there? Because that's where Uncle
Texas,
TJ lives.
San Antonio.
Nah,
San Antonio is
a
it's
little
okay.
off.
Yeah.
Interesting.
See, but remember, there's one thing that this map doesn't accurately reflect, and you know what that is? It's based on today's interest rates. A lot of people are locked into that sub 3 interest rate,
Mm-hmm.
or sub 4 interest rate. So those people are going to do just fine. They're going to have all this additional spending money because they're not paying all this new money. They're locked into their lower interest rates.
Yeah.
So,
I also think a lot of people, and I don't know how much you've heard of this either, Chris. I think a lot of people are like, oh, well, I need 20% down. And it's like, have you actually done the math? It's like, okay, so like the thing that bothers me a little bit, it's like you almost want to just like get into it. Like if you want to buy a house, buy the house, right? Like if you have 10%, buy the house. Don't wait to be like, oh, let me get the 20% down payment, because the amount of money that you're going to spend sitting there when you could have had appreciation of, say, because I guarantee it's going to take you another 2 to 3 years, unless you have a sizable portfolio or something and you're willing to let that go. But so many people I know are like, oh, in 2 to 3 years we'll buy because then we'll have 20% down payment. And I'm like, okay, so in 2 to 3 years, the housing prices will have gone up 5 to 10%. And I'm like, at that same point, you could have had equity in the home, and now basically been close to having your PMI already kind of taken off. But instead, you're waiting there. So it's like, I don't understand why people are like, oh, but then I had to pay PMI. It's like, okay, well, you either have to come up with 60 grand or pay $80 a month. Which would you rather choose? And to me, it's like the math has always been simple. Every time I've gone through that exercise, it's like, well, do I want to sell more stock? And I'm like, okay, do I want to sell more stock to pay up to 20%? Or, for example, this most recent house we bought in May, we thought it was going to appraise. It didn't. So we had to come out of pocket 10 grand. And they're like, well, do you want to come out of pocket 10 grand, or do you want to pay, I forget what it was, like $40 a month in private mortgage insurance? I did some quick math. I was like, well, I really don't want to sell any more stock to give you this 13 grand or whatever gap that I need to give you. So I was just like, let me just do some math. So it's like, we ended up at an 18.8% down payment instead of a 20%. And they were like, yeah, just, whatever you think the house is worth more, just let us know. We'll come evaluate it and you should be good to go. Or just pay us, if say you do a really good summer, which we're on track to do a really good summer, pay an extra $5 grand and you'll probably be able to get it taken off way quicker than you expect. We're paying an extra like $40 a month or something for PMI, or it would have had to come out of pocket for like 13 grand. It just didn't make any sense. The difference in it was super simple. Because I think we end up having to pay like an extra grand or 100 or 1,020 bucks or something like that, versus had to come out of pocket like $1,300 or $13,000. It just didn't make sense. And now we own the asset. It's renting, so you have to do the benefit analysis. I think so many people are, and this isn't just with real estate, this is just in general with the stock market. All the time people hear a rule of thumb and they think that is the golden rule. It's like, well, rules are meant to be broken in some cases, right? I'm not saying just break them for the sake of it, but I'm just saying, like, I hear so many people like rely on rules, and it's gotten me into trouble so many times over the last 10 years where I'm like, well, that's a rule, so I can't fuck that up. And it's like, well, you realize that there's guidelines for certain reasons, right? Just like people like just only index invest. It's like, that's good for 95% of people, but the other 5.
Yeah, but we got what, 45, 50% returns this year?
Yeah,
come on,
man.
you're gonna be. You got 5 years worth. You got 5 years of waiting to get returns like that on the S&P, baby. Not 5. I think this year it's 2 years or 3 years, but hopefully we can keep up that momentum. I was
surprised. Yeah, we're up 43, 44% compared to the S&P's pulled back 15.
So let Strongman do a video. Come on, Strongman. Where are you, Strongman? Why are you not comparing us right now? What's going on?
Strongman's going through some stuff.
I know.
Be nice to Strongman. He does a good job. He's having fun still. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, we had a good chat about everything. I was going to say, do we want to talk about Verizon? Or do we want to talk about Google? But we felt
okay. So I think we could possibly trim away Verizon. I think the valuation has gotten to the point where I don't think that there's a lot more upside. It is a good place to be for stability. But I wouldn't necessarily want to be in it long term for capital appreciation purposes. So I think maybe we can trim Verizon, and maybe that's where we park ASTS. What do you think?
I don't
Do you want to
know. That's fun.
degen? Do you want to degen into ASTS
I'll
using
gamble. I
Verizon?
mean, what's the worst? Especially if we're gonna add
I-
some money.
Yeah.
That'll give us $120.
So let's do
Uh,
that. Let's use the
let's
Verizon
see if
to
there's
buy
anything.
ASTS. Yeah.
Let's look at other things. If there's just see if there's anything else. We didn't talk about DPST, but that was a
Oh, right. That was a
good
good.
chat.
Yeah.
That was a good
Yeah.
chat this morning, and we got in. Or maybe it was
Yeah.
last night. I bought a share last night, and I bought the rest this morning.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? I take it back. Sell Verizon and buy more DPSD. Because
You
I
think
think
so?
regionals are going to go on a run for a little bit. And especially if interest rates get cut, a lot of them are going to retrace much higher. So I know that the KRE has been riding higher. And I kind of just want to make sure that we're in that. So that could be a leverage play, but it's going to be a very short-term leverage play, not like something that I would hold on to for the rest of the year. But
Mm-hmm.
if Tom Lee is correct in that we are going to see a jump in or rotation into value, there's a lot of value in the regional banks right now that's going to be unlocked. And then there's also they're all also maintaining their cash flows and their dividends, so that should help also. So DPST I think is a great place to be just for temporary purposes.
Okay, so you said sell Verizon for that. I was trying to think if there's anything else.
I still want to buy more BPYPN, man. I think we
Well,
should keep loading this thing up. Yeah.
so we do
Right
50
now,
50. Do 50% Verizon into DPST and then the rest into BPYPN, or should we?
yeah, I think that's a good idea. Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. I don't think it's bad. And I agree with Tom, by the way. I don't know if we're actually going to get the 30-40% rally that he's expecting over the next couple months, but
Mm-hmm.
I do hear what he's saying. I do think that small caps will benefit for sure. So I do have, I think it's 225 calls for the end of August. And for IWM, sorry, I'll state that. And then I also have been selling puts because I see more upside than I do. So I think I have like 205 puts for August or something like that. And every month I'll just roll those and capture. I think I'm up about 40-45% on them already. And so I might roll those for September and roll them up to 210 maybe. I don't know.
We didn't speak about we didn't get a chance to speak completely about Tellurian. It's a funny story. It's a funny story. So someone who's part of the Patreon, right? He messages me because he bought a lot of Tel Z, and he was like, "Chris, damn it, man, I'm gonna lose all my money." I said, "What do you mean you're gonna lose all your money?" It's like the company's getting bought out. Like, what's gonna happen? I'm like, wait a second. You think if you buy the way that it works is that if you buy a company that gets bought out, the debt holders, they should all be celebrating and partying, especially if it's trading below market value. So now he woke up. I told him, like, no, watch your portfolio tomorrow. When you open it, it's going to be close to 24, 25. Dude, this guy's got like 3,000 shares of Tel Z. He's making about, he's going to do well, on this position. It's kind of crazy to see. A lot of people don't understand the credit markets and the debt markets. Believe it or not, there's a lot of value there, and it's actually safe value. So I'm happy to see people making money on Tel Z. We did good on Tellurian as well. That was a good play on a possible acquisition of a very, very underappreciated asset. So it works. It works.
Yeah, I just did some quick calcs while you were chatting, and all these combined, because we sold them at various prices, but all of it combined, we ended up about $347 invested on the cost basis side, and we sold it for about 475, 480. So that's about a 37-38% rate of return.
Not bad for a month.
Yeah. So some of them were as quick as 5 days. So June 5th to June 10th. And some of it obviously took a little bit longer, about a month and a half. But yeah, not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, not bad if you
Sometimes,
can do that.
sometimes you get these quick opportunities that can really like just help boost your total returns. It's rare that you're going to see things like this, but you just have to be willing to kind of strike a little bit. And what I really liked about our play in this is that we weren't stupid about it and saying, let's hold it until forever. Like we were like, no, like, look, if it's
Yeah.
going up, let's trim as it goes up. And so we made
Which
money on trimming up.
I wanna say, Chris, I've been asking about selling Verizon for a couple months.
Yeah. The thing is, their new earnings gave us a little bit better of a pickup.
That's true. I don't know. I haven't followed it, right? But has
Their
the story
their broadband
deteriorated a little bit, or
their broadband ads have been like their broadband net sales additions have been kind of slowing down a little bit.
okay?
So the only play that's really left is not really growth, but just a little bit of deleveraging and also yield chasing. Because right now it does still yield a good 6.5%
Oh
dividend.
yeah.
So it's still a good place to be if you want to be like, remember, our goal here is to beat the market. Okay. If your goal is to basically just generate income, that's fine too. And that works for a lot of people. But my goal for us is we want to beat the market and we want to beat it pretty, safely. So that's why we're looking at the opportunities in the credit market sometimes too, like the Tellurian TellZ thing. We're also looking at, the BPYPN thing, the office REIT area, because I think
Mhm.
that there's value for capital appreciation on top of dividend appreciation. I still remember having this conversation with my brother where I was telling him, like, hey, listen, we should buy some bonds. He's like, why would we buy a bond? Like, it only generates like 5% return. And I'm like, yeah, but a bond trading at 50% discount is generating a 10% return.
Mhm.
So it's like, oh, then it clicks in his head. And then I said, once you annualize out that, hey, if this thing goes back to its normal trading range, you've got 100% in capital appreciation. Not only are you getting dividend and interest income, but you're getting the capital appreciation on top of it. Can you just share the screen one more time? Because I want to show BPYPM as a play on that and why it's such a great place to be. So
Yeah, because your whole analysis with that is Brookfield, which is BN, will
yeah.
eventually. Well, do you want me to share the portfolio screen? Sorry.
Yeah. Just show the
Sorry.
portfolios.
I
The
thought
one
you
thing
said
that
we're
the
sharing.
one thing that's not even calculated in there in terms of like a total return for that. So if you scroll into it, right there, it's up about 20% for the year. But what's more significant is that we actually got two additional payments because they're quarterly payments, right? And so we have an additional 6% that's layered on top of there. So technically, our total gain isn't 19% that's listed there. It's actually closer to 25,
Yep.
because we got the interest payments that are coming in also. So this is where you have to ask yourself, like, okay, like what part of the markets do you want to be in? I think a lot of retail, they don't necessarily look at the credit markets. They don't look at preferred equities. Whereas I'm more like, hey, let's look at that. And this is one of the reasons why we opened a Fidelity account instead of opening a Robinhood, because Fidelity actually lets you be in some of these more non-retail plays that
Mhm.
are out there. So
So
yeah.
you'll see, like in the description, it's a 6.25% yielder for the preferred shares. We bought it for just over $13. So we're basically 47, 48% discount from what the preferred par value is, which is $25. So if they want to eliminate this, they'd have to buy us out at $25. So
Mhm.
that's what the thought is, right? But since we bought it at such a discount, we were able to basically get that same yield of that 625 yield off that par value, but we bought it for $13. So
Right.
we're essentially getting a 13% yield now compared to that 6.25% yield. And
Yeah.
now you can see the price of this has gone up from $13 to 15. But if they came out tomorrow and be like, we're tired of paying this $200 million a year in preferred equity or preferred dividends to these preferred shareholders, let's buy them out. They could buy us out, but they're going to buy us out at $25. So that's the thought is we doubled our money. In the meantime, we're sitting on a 13% dividend yield. Now it could get to the
Mhm.
point where this gets to $20 and Chris and I are like, I don't know. Brookfield's
Hmm.
kind of looking a little shaky, but we
Mhm.
also have gotten our, almost 80% return at that point. So instead
Yeah.
of sitting and waiting for the extra 20%, we might say, well, that dividend yield is pretty good, but we could take it and go put it in this other lucrative thing where we think we can make 30%. We'd probably go and do that thing. But for now, it's just like it's still like shooting fish in a barrel almost.
To me, I like the fact that like this has two different upward momentum things going for it. You've got one, which is return to office. A lot more people are coming back to the office more frequently. A lot of businesses are doing that. So a lot of leases are starting to kind of come back. So the leasing rates are coming back. And then you layer on top interest rate cuts, making the floating rate debt, which these guys have a lot of, become cheaper to service, which means more income goes towards deleveraging, which then ends up giving more confidence this thing. And then also on top of it, you've got, if interest rates get cut, you're going to have people looking for yield. So they're going to say, hey, I could use a 10% yield. So like right now, if you bought it at 15, you're still going to get a 10% yield per year. You know, so their likelihood of people getting in it's pretty up. It's pretty high. So this is where you kind of have to think not like a equity investor and just put on like a credit investor hat. And sometimes you'll understand it, sometimes you won't. And that's, believe it or not, one of the plays that I have for CCL and NCLH, which is you're seeing a lot more people going on cruises. But what's more important is that the expectation of rate cuts will eventually come in and start cutting down on the interest charges on the debt that these guys have, in which case all that interest now ends up going into the cash flows to pay down debt. And as debt goes down, that means that more of their value of their enterprise is going to be in the equity. So this is why everything that we have on here is positioned in a way to capture the upside of interest rates getting cut by the Fed, but then also looking at some of the macro decisions and saying, okay, where can this company possibly go, you know, even if there was a recession. So some of these plays are purely like recession hedges out there. Like TMF is a recession hedge. That's the reason why we bought it. Why? Because if we do get a recession, people are going to be buying long-term treasuries to get that yield because it's a safe yield, right? And so that's why that is going to shoot up. Now, on the other hand, we might take a little bit of a hit on some of these other things, but it's fine because we have a hedge against it. That's why we're trying to eventually become a hedge fund, right? Where you're trying to basically get all the upside by limiting your downside also. So,
yeah, and some of them are just moon plays, literally, like
yeah,
so.
Yeah, moon plays are fun, man.
Moon plays are fun. We'll see. That if it magically goes up to like $100 a share, you guys probably won't see me anymore. No, I'm just kidding. But that'll be that. If that goes well, and I haven't pussed out at that point and sold, that'll be my ticket. That and Palantir, but Palantir I don't have a lot invested comparatively to its current market cap, right? I mean, that's part of the game. It's like you have to recognize it's like Amazon might double, but is it going to quadruple from here in the next 5 years? Probably not, unless something absolutely insane happens. But that's the thing. Is like you could. What's that?
I wish we could do some options plays in this, but I don't want to do it. I don't want to show people how to do. Because let me tell you, it's really hard to show retail investors the crazy options plays that are out there. And like just how profitable they could be, because the thing is, getting people into something is simple and it's easy. It's the fact that you can't tell them when to get out, and then the greed kicks in and they go super hard. Like they see 100% return on a product, they're like, oh, I need to dump my life savings into this, and I'm like, no, don't do that. That's not what you want to do, you know. But there are great options plays out there as well. But you know, it is what it is. Yeah, but I do think eventually we should take a look at some of the mega caps again. Not anytime soon, but we should keep a track of mega caps, because I mean, look at Google. Google's down to like 160s again, even on the back of a strong earnings. So if Google retraces back to its mid-year lows again, definitely could be another opportunity to add up some more. ET FaceTime says should have bought DPST calls a month ago. Maybe, but you know what? Who's got calls on TFC? Who's a regional bank who's trading at 52-week highs? you know.
Yeah.
So
But yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, I'm a long-term holder in this. I would love to get it to 500 shares eventually.
yeah,
That would be the goal. But it's nice. It's nice to get a little bit of a pullback because a lot of these things, Amazon's been okay. Google and Spy for me have been underwater, under covered calls. So I'm actually getting a little bit of breathing room um, for them to kind of come back. And Alphabet now is out of the money again, and
yeah.
it's not like I've gone hemorrhaged cash, right? I
Hmm.
didn't panic, buy back my calls or anything like that. I've been slow and steady. I mean, look at this fucking run,
Hmm.
130 to 190. It's a literally almost a 50% increase in the matter of months. So no wonder. But here I have been steady, slowly increasing my premium throughout the whole entire time, and I think on my TQQQs, I'm up like 88% on those, and they're going to close
Yeah.
worthless in the next couple weeks. I'm sure, unless the market does another crazy head spin and goes back to all-time highs. But it just goes to show you, if you're able to monitor and keep track of what you're doing and not get greedy and be calm, then you're going to do perfectly fine. I'm okay with the pullback. I think it's healthy. It's, the price to earnings ratios for a lot of these companies have gotten too expansive. It's at 25x, which I think is appropriate, beginning to be appropriately valued for Alphabet. I would love to see it at 140. If it gets to 140, I'll probably sell a put, probably because I don't have all the cash I need right now. But there's a couple other things in the portfolio that have been doing well that are small
Mhm.
caps. Some residential real estate investment trusts, not residential, sorry, warehouse real estate investment trust, Stag. That's going
Yeah.
back and doing well. And I've been thinking about selling that one for quite some time. And so I might take that, it's 800 shares or so, and move that into Alphabet or maybe the S&P. I'm not 100% sure yet. Or go fucking
Yeah.
crazy and put an extra 30 or 40 grand into Rocket Lab, which I think would be a dumb move if it goes down, but a fucking genius move if it moons like I think it will. But
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready to take that risk.
I think we eventually need to do a special episode on positioning for a recession, because I think
Yeah.
we need to get to a point where even if a recession doesn't come, we kind of want to hedge ourselves against a recession. And so we'll do a special episode, like a recession special episode, where we're saying, if we do get a recession, these are the plays that you want to be. So basically, it'll be a lot more capital preservation plays rather than going for capital appreciation plays, in which case we might actually find some secret capital appreciation plays out there as well. But I think at this point, I am not opposed to saying that we are closer to a recession than we are towards a new bull market. I think that there are definitely going to be some areas that we have to keep an eye on. So just to be on the safe side, maybe we can even lock in some gains by basically selling some puts on some of the things we have, but not in this portfolio, obviously, because we don't have enough shares to even justify one put buy. you know,
Yeah.
so we'll see what happens.
But I mean, just like when we saw interest rate rise, right? What happened to the equities market in 2022, right?
Yeah,
And it's exact same sort of situation. It might not last forever, but there's going to be some adjustments, right? Certain economies and certain industries will do really well, like the small caps and medium caps that have been kind of hindered, because they might not have that excess cash flow like the Mag 7. But at the same time, you're going to see other things really struggle and money move out of those things. And it might not necessarily even be because those companies are doing worse. It just could be because the valuations have gotten super rich and the money should flow into things that are super cheap right now. For example, if you're looking at the S&P, I'm not sure what the price to earnings ratio is at the moment, but I know it's north of 20. But if you do the comparable to the Russell 2000, I think it's at about 11. So if you think
yeah,
about it, it's literally double the value, and it's probably even worse. I wouldn't be surprised if the S&P is over a 25x price to earnings multiple right now. So if you think about it in that perspective, the IWM or Russell 2000 is valued at 40% of the value of the SPY in that respect, just on
yeah.
the valuation of your dollar perspective and how far it's going from a
Mhm.
valuation metric. So that's the sort of things that you need to kind of look at, and that's that's what they say when buy low, sell high, right? I mean, it's been
Yeah.
a phenomenal time to buy some of these really well run real estate investment plays.
Yeah.
So I'm sure like Stag, it was a good time to buy. That never wavered. That was still printing money like nobody's business because it was well run. And I'm sure it'll run to $50 a share. Same with SL Green. You know, that was really well run. And I'm still holding it, Chris. I know Steven is. I don't know if you are. I think you've sold.
No, I sold most of it and bought BPYPM with it. So I'm not I'm not missing out a lot of gains, but it does hurt my heart to see it keep rising. But then again, I also want to trim volatility from my portfolio. I want to have a little bit more like stability.
Well, the quick money's been run, right? Now it's more like you're grinding out that last 40% gain,
Yep, exactly. And the thing is, I bought it in my IRA, so I didn't have to pay any taxes on it, which is also another big benefit.
Yeah, it's up 200%. And I'm still grinding, and I'm selling covered calls, fucking printing money on those too. You have to think, I bought them at $21-22, not nearly as good as you, but selling covered calls at something that's doubled in price. It's fucking.
That's pretty crazy. That's crazy,
money.
Man.
Yeah,
I'm glad to see it. I still remember the day I contacted you. I better get a commission off of this. You're buying me some dinner.
Hey, yeah, whenever I'm in Atlanta.
Technically, we need to be thanking Steven, because Steven is the one that put the bug in my ear. I looked at it and I was like, wait a second, there's actually a play here. And then I put the bug in your ear. So we kind of like networked it together. So we both owe Steven a dinner. You know, that's
I do need to go to New York and see that motherfucker.
I didn't get a chance to see him this time because I got a little bit busy. But one of these weekends we'll make a trip of it and just go. I have to go to New York sometime the next probably couple of weeks to go close on my condo, which I'm selling. So maybe if you have a chance, we'll I don't have a final date yet. Well, once I get a date, I might end up going, and we'll see. Yeah,
end of September, I'll be in an undisclosed European location, but after that, I'm pretty free, and before that, I'm pretty free. So just let me know.
Okay. Sam's like, you get him a thick Charizard Pokemon card.
That actually would be a good gift. Yeah. Cool. All right, my friend. Well, I'll reach out to you. We normally do this on Monday now, right? I forget.
Yeah, Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Thursdays, what
we'll go back to doing Mondays and Thursdays.
Mondays and Thursdays. The reason why we did Monday and Thursday is because we wanted to give equal time between the markets, and so we didn't want to do like a Sunday because then you don't get enough market time between. So we wanted to do Monday nights, so that way you get a full day Friday, a full day Monday, and then we have a chat. And then same thing with Thursday, that you get full day Tuesday, full day Wednesday, full day Thursday, full day Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then you get. So anyway, I like it.
So it was like cut Steve a check. It's like, nah, man, Steve is doing better than both of us, probably.
I know, man. I know. I need to follow his of it. Steve's a good influence because he keeps telling me to write the Seeking Alpha articles, and I reference those a lot in a lot of the things that I talk about, and I just need to go back and update them. So maybe if I get superpower,
let's include that. Let's include Steve's Seeking Alpha in our detail in the show notes. This way, if anyone wants to follow someone who's really good at income investing, definitely follow Steven Fiorello. Guy is excellent with his analysis, especially when it comes to the credit markets and also like income markets. I mean, he's been talking about so many great companies. I mean, me and him go back and forth on certain companies, and I'm not always in agreement with him, but the ones that I look at, he brings like gold, so having people like that in your network it's very important to basically find hidden gems like that. So it's not just about finding the right stocks. It's also about finding the right people who talk about the right stocks. So, So if you want to give Steven a follow, by all means, follow him. He's in, Matt just put him in the chat. And
I put it in the description as well. So, and once I'm done the video, I'll put it in the comment section to make sure people follow him. Steve's a great guy. Yeah, I need to meet up with him. Every time I talk to him, he's like, "You have more money than me." I'm like, "That's fucking a lie, guy. Like, we know you're printing it over there in New York."
Let me just highlight his Seeking Alpha. This is the guy right here. It's funny. The funny thing about Steve, I told Steve, I thought he was in his 50s. He's closer to my age. I'm like,
Really?
this is yeah, dude. He's only 40. He's like
There you
41,
go.
42. Yeah,
I would have thought 42. Yeah, I would have thought
he's
42.
just he's just stressed out all the time, friend. I mean, the amount of writing that he does, of course, he's stressed out.
Oh, dude. Yeah.
Look at this.
And I wrote 5 articles and I got paid.
Yeah.
This
So
guy,
Steven's doing well.
He writes anything about anything, and
Yeah.
they're not bullshit. Those articles
No,
are not
not at
bullshit.
all.
Actually, what I should do, Chris,
Mm-hmm.
and I should add, I don't know if I could split it, but I was gonna say he does a really good article based off of, I don't remember if it's the money. I don't know if it's $100 a week, but he does a really good article about adding $100 a week, and I think it's the one that you're just on, about the
Yeah.
income that he gets from that $100 a week that he
Yeah.
invests. And I think he's up to like $1,300 a year or something like
year.
that.
Yeah.
On the
Oh
portfolio.
yeah, right here. Yep.
Yeah.
So he's got 17,000 allocated with about 15, like almost $1,600 in dividends per year. So that's I mean, that's almost a 9-10% return. I mean, dude, most hedge funds can't even produce this much consistently, and he's doing it via dividends. Good for him.
Yeah, and I'm thinking maybe we should do the same. I should start writing articles about our public portfolio, and every time we get YouTube payments.
Nah, bro, I can't do that to my Patreon people. My Patreon people,
No?
they need that exclusive content. I'm not gonna whore myself out to Seeking Alpha.
No.
Nope.
Smart man.
No. Patreon, that's all for you guys, okay? Screw all these other people. The Patreon people are getting their own content. That's it. Sorry, no Seeking Alpha, no Motley Fool, all that other BS. No, it's strictly just for the Patreon people. Patreon gang, that's right. All right, guys. I think that's about it. Yep. Later, guys.
Cheers, all.
Take care. Bye.
Greed is good. The stock is going to go up, down, sideways, or in fucking circles. It's all a fugazi.
Sell it all.
Greed is good. Huge upside potential, upwards of $60,000.